The clock on the wall read 12:17 a.m. when Marcus Reed heard the sound that would pull him into a world he had no business entering.
This
It
is
came
Control.
through the
We have a breach in
security
Sector
monitor.
3.
Not
Respond
a crash,
immediately.
but something worse. The sharp crack of glass hitting marble, followed by silence so complete it felt wrong. He had been watching 47 screens for 3 hours, the way he did every night, scanning corridors that gleamed like mirrors under fluorescent lights. Executive floor, camera 14. A woman's silhouette swaying near the floor-to-ceiling windows of the corner office, one hand gripping the edge of a mahogany desk, the other clutching something small and white. Marcus leaned forward, his coffee forgotten. The woman stumbled, her shoulder hitting the glass, and the object in her hand, a tumbler, shattered against the floor. She dropped to her knees, then forward onto her palms. Vivian Keller, CEO, billionaire. The name that hung on the building's facade in brushed steel letters 42 stories above the Chicago streets. His hand moved to the radio clipped to his belt. Miguel Santos, head of night security, should have been on rounds. Marcus pressed the button twice. Static. He tried again, calling Miguel's badge number. Nothing came back except the hollow hiss of dead air. The communication system had worked perfectly 20 minutes ago, when Miguel checked in from the parking garage. Now it was silent as a tomb. Marcus stood, his chair scraping against the floor of the control room. On screen 14, Vivian Keller had stopped moving. She lay on her side, one arm stretched toward her desk, as if reaching for help that would never come. The laptop screen still glowed, casting blue light across her face. Her mouth moved, speaking to no one, or praying, or simply gasping for air. Every protocol Marcus had learned in 8 years said to call his supervisor first. Wait for authorization. Follow the chain of command. But protocol was written by people who had never watched someone die in real time on a monitor while bureaucracy tied their hands. He grabbed the master key ring from the lockbox, the one reserved for emergencies, and ran. The stairwell was concrete and steel, his boots echoing off the walls as he climbed. 42 floors. He counted them in his head, pushing his legs faster when they started to burn at floor 20. 8 minutes. That was how long a person could survive without oxygen if their airway was blocked. Less if they were choking. Even less if they had taken something that was shutting their body down from the inside. His phone buzzed in his pocket as he hit floor 35. Dylan, a text message sent automatically from the app Marcus had set up. Nightmare. Come home? His son was 8 years old and still woke up sometimes, reaching for a mother who had died the day he was born. Marcus kept climbing. He would call Dylan back in 10 minutes or 20, or however long it took to make sure another child did not lose their mother tonight. Floor 42, the executive level. The door from the stairwell required a key card that Marcus did not have, but the master key opened a maintenance panel that bypassed the electronic lock. He stepped into a hallway that smelled like leather and expensive cologne, so different from the floors below where the scent was industrial cleaner and recycled air. The door to Vivian Keller's office stood partially open, light spilling across the polished floor. Marcus pushed through and found her exactly where the camera had shown her, face down, unmoving. A bottle of Glenlivet lay on its side near the window, amber liquid pooling on the marble. Beside it, a prescription bottle, cap off, white pills scattered like seeds. Ambien. The label was still legible from 3 feet away. He dropped to his knees beside her and pressed 2 fingers against her throat. Pulse. Faint, irregular, but there. Her breathing was shallow, barely stirring the air. Marcus rolled her onto her back, tilted her head to open her airway, then pulled his phone and dialed 911. The operator's voice was calm, professional, asking questions Marcus answered while his hands checked for injuries. No blood, no visible trauma. Just a woman who had mixed sleeping pills with whiskey and was now seconds away from never waking up. Vivian's eyes fluttered open, not fully conscious, just a flicker of awareness breaking through whatever fog had pulled her under. Her hand found Marcus's wrist, fingers cold and trembling. Her lips moved, forming words that came out barely louder than breath. Nathan. Don't let them take Nathan. Robert knows I'm weak. He'll use this. Please. Then her grip loosened and she was gone again, sinking back into unconsciousness. Marcus kept his hand on her shoulder, feeling the faint rise and fall of her chest, while sirens grew louder in the distance below. Her laptop was still open on the desk. He glanced at the screen. An email, subject line visible, emergency custody hearing, evidence of mental instability attached. The sender's name was a law firm Marcus did not recognize, but the recipient line showed Robert Keller's address. He looked back at Vivian. Her face was pale, lips tinged faintly blue. Whatever battle she was fighting, it was not just against the pills in her system. It was against someone who wanted to take the thing she loved most, and who had just been handed ammunition that could end the war. The paramedics arrived 9 minutes later. They moved with the kind of efficiency that came from seeing too many people in too many emergencies, loading Vivian onto a stretcher, while one of them fired questions at Marcus. What did he see? What time? Any known allergies? Marcus answered everything he could, then stepped back as they wheeled her toward the elevator. One of the EMTs stayed behind, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. She was looking at the pill bottle, then at Marcus. You the one who found her? Marcus nodded. I work security, saw her on the monitor. You did good. Another 10 minutes and we'd be calling the coroner instead of the hospital. She left, and Marcus was alone in the office. He should have left too, locked the door, filled out an incident report. Instead, he stood there looking at the space where Vivian Keller had built an empire. The desk was massive, the kind that cost more than Marcus made in a year. Awards lined the shelves: Innovator of the Year, Top 50 Tech CEOs, Woman in Business Leadership. A framed photograph sat near the edge of the desk. Vivian and a young boy, maybe 9 years old, standing in front of a carousel. The boy had her eyes, her sharp features. He was smiling, but there was something tentative about it, as if he was not sure the moment would last. Nathan, the name she had whispered. The reason she was lying on the floor instead of asking for help. Marcus picked up the prescription bottle and read the label. Vivian Keller, Ambien 10 milligrams. Take 1 tablet at bedtime. Do not exceed recommended dose. Do not combine with alcohol. The bottle was nearly empty. If she had taken 4 or 5 pills with half a bottle of scotch, it was a miracle she was still breathing. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy, fast, the sound of someone running. Marcus turned as Miguel Santos burst through the door, his face flushed, breathing hard. Miguel was 40, built like a boxer, with a tattoo of an eagle on his forearm and a wedding ring he never stopped twisting when he was nervous. He was twisting it now. Jesus Christ, Marcus. What the hell happened? I called you 3 times. Radio was dead. Miguel pulled the radio from his belt and stared at it like it had betrayed him. The battery indicator showed full charge. He pressed the call button. Static crackled, then cleared. Working now. Miguel's jaw tightened. Must have been interference. I was in the basement checking the backup generator. Didn't hear a thing. Marcus studied his friend's face. Miguel was a terrible liar, always had been. When they played poker at the monthly security staff game, Miguel's tells were so obvious it was almost painful to watch. The way his eyes drifted left when he bluffed. The way he touched his ear when he was holding a good hand. Right now, Miguel was doing both. You smell like beer. Miguel stiffened. I had 1 drink on my break. Sue me. Marcus did not push, not yet. The ambulance was taking Vivian to Mercy Hospital, and the police would want statements. There would be time later to figure out why Miguel had been unreachable when the CEO of the company they were supposed to protect had nearly died. Right now, Marcus just needed to get through the next few hours without losing his job. They rode the elevator down together in silence. Miguel kept checking his phone, typing something, then deleting it. Marcus watched the floor numbers descend and thought about Dylan, alone in their apartment with his grandmother, waking from a nightmare and finding his father gone. He would call soon, explain that work had held him up, promise to be home before breakfast. Dylan would understand. He always did. He was 8 years old and already carried more understanding than most adults Marcus knew. The hospital waiting room was white and sterile, filled with the kind of fluorescent lighting that made everyone look half dead. Marcus sat in a plastic chair and gave his statement to a police officer who looked barely old enough to shave. The officer took notes, asked the same questions the paramedic had asked, then told Marcus he was free to go. He did not go. He sat in the chair and waited, though he could not have said what he was waiting for. At 3 in the morning, the elevator doors opened and a man stepped out. Expensive suit, Italian shoes, the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. He did not approach the reception desk. He did not ask about Vivian's condition. He pulled out his phone and made a call, his voice low but carrying in the quiet. That's right. Tonight, ambulance took her to Mercy. No, she's alive. Stable, I think. Doesn't matter. File the emergency petition first thing tomorrow. This is exactly what we needed. Marcus stood. The man turned, noticing him for the first time. Up close, he was older than Marcus had thought, maybe 42, with silver threading through his dark hair. His eyes swept over Marcus's uniform. The navy blue shirt with Stellaron security embroidered on the chest, the utility belt, the boots that had seen better days. Judgment flashed across his face, quick and dismissive. Can I help you? Marcus took a step closer. You're Robert Keller. It was not a question. The man's resemblance to the boy in the photograph on Vivian's desk was too strong to miss. Same sharp jawline, same cold eyes. That's right. And you are? Marcus Reed. I found your ex-wife tonight, saved her life. Robert's expression did not change. Well, good for you. I'm sure Vivian will send you a nice thank you card. You're not going to ask how she's doing? A thin smile crossed Robert's face. She's alive. That's all I need to know. He glanced at his phone, then back at Marcus. I don't mean to be rude, but I have a lot to handle tonight. Lawyers, paperwork, that sort of thing. I'm sure you understand. Marcus did not move. I heard what you said on the phone. About filing a petition. Robert's smile disappeared. You were eavesdropping. Hard not to hear when you're shouting into your phone in a hospital waiting room. For a moment, Robert just stared at him. Then he laughed, a short, sharp sound without humor. You think you know something, Mr. Reed? You think you understand what's happening here? Let me explain it to you. Vivian is brilliant, ruthless. She built $1 billion company from nothing. But she's also unstable. She works 100 hours a week, misses our son's school events, forgets his birthday, and now she's collapsing in her office with pills and alcohol. So yes, I'm filing for emergency custody because my son deserves a parent who's actually present, not a workaholic who's too busy running an empire to notice he exists. He stepped past Marcus toward the elevator. Over his shoulder, he added one more thing. What's your name again? Reed? My lawyers might want to talk to you. You witnessed her condition. That could be very helpful. The elevator doors closed. Marcus stood in the empty hallway, hands clenched at his sides. He knew the type. Robert Keller was the kind of man who saw every person as either a tool or an obstacle. Right now, Marcus was a tool, a janitor, no, a security guard who had stumbled onto something useful and could be bought or bullied into testifying. But Marcus was neither for sale nor easily intimidated. He had been broke before. He had worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table after Rebecca died. He had scrubbed floors and fixed broken toilets and done every humiliating task that came with being at the bottom of the ladder. And through it all, he had kept his integrity. It was the only thing his father had left him, and Marcus would be damned before he sold it to a man like Robert Keller. He left the hospital as dawn started to break over Chicago. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds that promised rain. Marcus drove home in his 12-year-old Ford truck, the radio off, the streets nearly empty. His apartment was in Pilsen, a neighborhood where gentrification and old-school working-class life existed in uneasy proximity. The rent was high but not impossible, and the elementary school was decent enough that Marcus did not worry about Dylan getting a good education. Linda Reed was asleep on the couch when Marcus walked in. His mother. 62 years old and looking 70, her face lined with the kind of exhaustion that came from too many years of hard work and not enough rest. She had moved in with Marcus 3 years ago after her second heart attack, when it became clear she could not live alone. Now she helped with Dylan during the day while Marcus slept, and Marcus took over at night before heading to work. It was not a perfect system, but it was what they had. Dylan was in his room, curled under a blanket covered with cartoon dinosaurs. He was small for his age, with dark hair that fell into his eyes and a face that belonged on Renaissance paintings, delicate, thoughtful, somehow old. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed and put a hand on his son's shoulder. Dylan's eyes opened, unfocused at first, then locking onto his father's face. Dad, you came back. Of course I did. Always do. I had the dream again. About Mom. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. The dream was always the same. Rebecca holding Dylan as a baby, singing a lullaby Dylan could not possibly remember because he had only heard it once, in the delivery room, in the minutes before she died. But somehow the dream persisted, as if his son's mind had invented a memory to fill the hole his mother's death had left. Tell me about it. Dylan sat up, rubbing his eyes. She was singing. That song, the one Grandma sings sometimes. The one about the river. And she was smiling at me. She looked happy. She was happy. She loved you more than anything. Do you think she can see me? From heaven? Marcus did not believe in heaven. He had stopped believing in much of anything the day Rebecca's heart had stopped beating on the operating table while he held their newborn son. But Dylan needed to believe. So Marcus lied, the way he had lied 100 times before. I know she can, and she's proud of you, every single day. Dylan leaned against his father's chest, small and warm and trusting. Marcus wrapped his arms around him and held on, feeling the steady rhythm of his son's heartbeat. This was what mattered, not the billion-dollar deals or the corner offices or the empire building. Just this, a child who needed his father to show up, to be present, to prove that love did not end when life got hard. They stayed like that until Linda woke and started making breakfast. Scrambled eggs and toast, the same meal she had made for Marcus when he was Dylan's age. Marcus ate without tasting, his mind still at the hospital, still in that office where Vivian Keller had whispered her son's name like a prayer. His phone rang at 7:30. Unknown number. Marcus answered, already knowing what was coming. Mr. Reed, this is Jennifer Walsh, HR Director at Stellaron Industries. We need to see you this afternoon, 2 o'clock, regarding last night's incident. I already gave a statement to the police. This is an internal matter. It's important that we clarify the sequence of events. There are some questions about protocol. What kind of questions? Jennifer's voice was professionally pleasant, the kind of tone that could make a firing sound like a promotion. I'd rather discuss this in person. Will 2 o'clock work for you? Marcus looked at Dylan, who was pushing eggs around his plate, and at Linda, who was coughing into a napkin, her face pale. He thought about the medical bills stacked on the kitchen counter, the rent due in 5 days, the groceries running low in the refrigerator. I'll be there. He hung up and stared at his phone. 8 years. He had worked at Stellaron Industries for 8 years, first as a night janitor, then as a maintenance technician, finally as a security monitor. He had never been late, never missed a shift, never stolen so much as a pen. And now he was being called into HR because he had saved the CEO's life. The meeting was in a conference room on the 15th floor, one of those soulless corporate spaces with a long table and uncomfortable chairs. Jennifer Walsh sat at the head, flanked by 2 other people Marcus did not recognize. Jennifer was in her 40s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. Mr. Reed, thank you for coming. Please sit. Marcus sat. He did not remove his jacket, did not relax, did not pretend this was anything other than what it was. Jennifer opened a folder. I've read your statement from last night. You entered the CEO's office at approximately 12:25 a.m. Is that correct? Yes. And you were working as a security monitor at the time? That's right. Can you explain why you felt it necessary to leave your post and access an area that requires senior security authorization? I saw Ms. Keller collapse on the monitor. I called Miguel Santos, head of night security. He didn't respond, so I went to help. One of the other people at the table, a man in a gray suit, leaned forward. Mr. Santos's report indicates you did not attempt to contact him. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened the call log. 3 calls to Miguel's badge number, all within 2 minutes, all showing no answer. He turned the screen toward them. I called him. 3 times he didn't pick up. Jennifer made a note. We'll look into that. However, the issue remains that you accessed a restricted area without authorization. That's a violation of company policy. The policy also says security personnel can override restrictions in emergency situations. That's true, but there's a question of judgment here. How did you know it was an emergency? Marcus stared at her. She was lying on the floor, not moving. That seemed like an emergency to me. Jennifer's smile tightened. We're not questioning your intentions, Mr. Reed. We're simply ensuring that proper protocols were followed, for legal reasons. You understand. Marcus understood perfectly. Stellaron Industries was covering its liability. If Vivian Keller sued the company for negligence, they needed to show they had investigated every employee involved. And if that meant throwing Marcus under the bus, they would do it without hesitation. Given the circumstances, we're reassigning you. Effective immediately, you'll be moved from the executive security detail to general maintenance. First shift, floors 1 through 10. That's a demotion. It's a lateral move. It's a 30% pay cut. Jennifer closed the folder. This is non-negotiable, Mr. Reed. You can accept the reassignment, or we can discuss other options. Other options meant being fired. Marcus knew it. They knew it. Everyone in the room was pretending this was a conversation, but it was really a threat wrapped in corporate politeness. He stood. I'll take the reassignment. Excellent. Report to facilities management tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. They'll give you your new assignment. Marcus left the conference room and took the elevator down. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage. He had saved a woman's life, and his reward was to be punished for it. Because that was how the world worked. The people at the top made the rules, and the people at the bottom paid the price when those rules were inconvenient. He drove to Millennium Park because he needed air, needed space, needed to think. It was 4 in the afternoon and the park was full of families, parents pushing strollers, kids running through the Crown Fountain, shrieking as water sprayed from the digital faces. Marcus sat on a bench near the bean and watched the light reflect off its curved surface, distorting the skyline into something abstract and unrecognizable. Dylan was supposed to meet him here after school. Marcus checked his phone. 20 minutes. He closed his eyes and tried to breathe. Dad. Dylan's voice cut through the fog. Marcus opened his eyes and saw his son running toward him, backpack bouncing, face bright with excitement. Behind him, walking more slowly, was another boy. Blonde hair, serious expression, hands shoved into the pockets of an expensive jacket. Marcus stood. Dylan crashed into him, hugging him around the waist. This is Nathan. He's in my class. He doesn't have anyone to play with, so I said he could come to the park with us. Is that okay? The boy, Nathan, stopped a few feet away, watching Marcus with cautious eyes. Up close, the resemblance to Vivian Keller was unmistakable. Same sharp features, same intelligent gaze. This was the child she had whispered about in her office, the reason she had nearly died. Of course it's okay. Marcus extended his hand. I'm Dylan's dad. Marcus. Nathan shook his hand, his grip surprisingly firm for a 9-year-old. Nathan Keller. The name hung in the air. Marcus did not react, did not let his face show recognition. He just smiled and gestured toward the fountain. You guys want to play? The two boys ran off, Dylan already explaining some complicated game involving pirates and monsters. Marcus watched them, feeling something heavy settle in his chest. Nathan laughed at something Dylan said, and the sound was so pure, so unguarded, that it hurt to hear. This was a child who did not laugh often. A woman appeared, walking quickly from the direction of Michigan Avenue. Mid-50s, gray hair pulled into a bun, sensible shoes. She was scanning the crowd with the kind of focused intensity that came from years of keeping track of things that mattered. When she spotted Nathan, relief flooded her face. Nathan, I told you to wait by the school. Nathan's shoulders hunched. Sorry, Mrs. Patricia, I just wanted to play with Dylan. The woman, Mrs. Patricia apparently, reached them and put a hand on Nathan's shoulder. Then she looked at Marcus. Really looked. Her eyes narrowed. You're the man from last night, the one who found Mrs. Keller. Marcus nodded. I work security at Stellaron. Mrs. Patricia's expression shifted, not hostile, but wary. Does Nathan know you? We just met. My son invited him to play. She glanced at the boys who were now climbing on the fountain's edge, then back at Marcus. I need to call Mrs. Keller. She'll want to know where Nathan is. She pulled out her phone and stepped away, speaking in low, urgent tones. Marcus caught fragments. Yes, he's fine. Playing with another boy. The father is here. He says he works for you. Yes, the same one. 5 minutes later, a black Tesla pulled up to the curb. The driver's door opened, and Vivian Keller stepped out. She looked terrible. Her hair, which Marcus had only seen perfectly styled in photographs, was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She was wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, so different from the tailored suits Marcus had seen in magazines that it took him a moment to reconcile them as the same person. But her face, sharp, intelligent, exhausted, was unmistakable. Vivian walked toward them, her gaze locked on Nathan. The boy saw her and froze, his expression shifting from joy to something more complicated. Not fear exactly, but not comfort either. Mom. Vivian reached him and dropped to her knees, pulling him into a hug. Nathan let himself be held, but his arms stayed at his sides. After a moment, Vivian pulled back and cupped his face in her hands. You scared me. You're supposed to wait for Mrs. Patricia. I wanted to play with Dylan. He's nice. Vivian's eyes found Marcus. He stood a few feet away, trying to give them privacy but unable to leave without Dylan. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Marcus saw the exhaustion in her voice, the fear barely held in check. She saw, he did not know what she saw. A man in jeans and a t-shirt, a maintenance worker, nobody important. She stood still holding Nathan's hand. Mr. Reed, Miss Keller, good to see you up and around. Her jaw tightened. I assume you've been told not to discuss last night with anyone. I haven't told anyone. Good, I'd like to keep it that way. What happened was a private matter. It doesn't concern anyone outside my family and my doctors. Marcus nodded. I understand. Do you? Because my ex-husband seems to think otherwise. He called me this morning. Said you were at the hospital. Said you heard him making phone calls. I did, and I didn't like what I heard. Vivian's expression hardened. You don't know anything about my situation, Mr. Reed. You don't know what I'm dealing with or what's at stake. So I'd appreciate it if you'd keep your opinions to yourself and stay out of my business. Dylan appeared at Marcus's side, sensing tension. Nathan stood beside his mother, looking at the ground. The four of them formed a strange tableau. Two families, two worlds, colliding in a public park because their children had decided to be friends. Dylan tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Dad, can Nathan come over sometime? He doesn't have anyone to play video games with. Marcus looked at Vivian, she looked at Nathan. The boy's eyes were pleading. Please, Mom, Dylan's nice. He doesn't care that I'm not good at sports. Something in Vivian's face softened. Just a little, just for a second. Then the armor came back up, and she was the CEO again, calculating risks and benefits. Maybe. We'll see. Nathan's face fell. Vivian noticed, and that crack appeared again. She took a breath. Give Mr. Reed your number, Mrs. Patricia. We'll arrange something. Mrs. Patricia handed Marcus a business card. The boys exchanged phones, entering each other's numbers with the kind of seriousness usually reserved for treaty negotiations. Marcus and Vivian stood in awkward silence, neither sure what to say. Finally, Vivian spoke. Thank you for last night. I haven't properly thanked you. You don't need to thank me. I just did what anyone would do. Not anyone. Most people would have waited for authorization. You didn't. I saw someone who needed help, that's all. Vivian studied him, and Marcus had the uncomfortable sensation of being dissected. This was a woman who had built a billion-dollar company by reading people, by understanding their motivations and weaknesses. She was trying to figure out what he wanted, why he had helped, what his angle was. I'll be very careful about who my son spends time with, Mr. Reed. Very careful. I understand. So will I. She nodded, then turned to Nathan. Say goodbye. Bye, Dylan. See you at school. The Tesla pulled away from the curb. Marcus and Dylan walked to the truck in silence. As they drove home, Dylan chattered about his new friend, about how Nathan knew everything about space and science, about how Nathan's house was probably huge and cool. Marcus listened and made the right sounds, but his mind was elsewhere. Vivian Keller thought he wanted something. She thought he was angling for money or favors or influence. She thought his kindness was a transaction, the opening move in some game he was playing. And maybe she had reason to think that. Maybe everyone who had ever helped her had wanted something in return. But Marcus did not want anything except to get through each day without his son going hungry or his mother ending up in the emergency room because they could not afford her medications. He did not want power or money or access to the executive floors. He just wanted to work his job, raise his son, and sleep at night knowing he had done the right thing. Dylan's voice pulled him back. Dad, do you think Nathan's mom is mean? He said she's always busy, that she forgets stuff sometimes. Marcus glanced at his son. I think she's probably doing the best she can. Being a parent is hard. Being a single parent is harder. She's probably just trying to take care of him the only way she knows how. Like you take care of me? Yeah, buddy, like that. Dylan was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm glad you're my dad, even if we're not rich, even if our apartment is small. I'm glad. Marcus's throat tightened. He reached over and ruffled Dylan's hair. Me too, kiddo. Me too. They went home, and Marcus made dinner while Linda rested on the couch and Dylan did homework at the kitchen table. Spaghetti and meatballs from a recipe Marcus's father had taught him when he was Dylan's age. Simple food, working class food, the kind of meal that filled you up without breaking the bank. After dinner, after Dylan was in bed and Linda had taken her evening pills, Marcus sat at the kitchen table and looked at the bills. Rent, electricity, Linda's prescriptions, Dylan's school supplies. The truck needed new brakes. The total came to more than Marcus would make in the next month, even with the reduced salary from his demotion. He thought about Robert Keller's offer, the lawyers who might want Marcus to testify, the money they would probably pay for his cooperation. Enough to cover the bills, maybe. Enough to make life a little easier. Then he thought about Vivian Keller on the floor of her office, her voice barely a whisper. Don't let them take Nathan. Marcus closed the bill folder and went to bed. He did not sleep well. He rarely did, but when he finally drifted off, he dreamed not of Rebecca, or the delivery room, or the flatline that had ended his old life. He dreamed of a boy with serious eyes and a mother who worked too hard and did not know how to show love without building walls around it. When his alarm went off at 5 a.m., Marcus got up and went to work. Because that was what you did. You showed up. You did the job. You kept going, even when the world made it clear you were expendable. Even when kindness was punished and cruelty rewarded. You kept going because giving up was not an option when people depended on you. The world did not care about men like Marcus Reed. But Marcus Reed cared about the world. And sometimes that had to be enough. The maintenance closet on the third floor smelled like bleach and defeat. Marcus spent his first week in his new assignment scrubbing floors that had already been cleaned twice, replacing light bulbs that still worked, and pretending not to notice the way other workers avoided eye contact when he passed. Word had spread fast. The security guard who had overstepped. The man who had forgotten his place. Dylan and Nathan played together twice that week, once at the park and once at Marcus's apartment. Vivian came to pick up her son both times, arriving precisely on time, staying exactly as long as politeness required. She thanked Marcus with the kind of distant courtesy usually reserved for service workers, which Marcus supposed he was. But something had shifted after that first meeting in the park. She no longer looked at him like he might be dangerous. Now she looked at him like he might be useful, which was somehow worse. The third time Nathan visited, Vivian arrived 20 minutes late. Marcus heard her footsteps in the hallway before she knocked. Quick, sharp, the rhythm of someone perpetually behind schedule. He opened the door and found her standing there with her phone pressed to her ear, one finger held up in the universal gesture for wait. She stepped inside without invitation, still talking. No, the merger projections need to be revised. I don't care what Charles says. The numbers don't work. We're not selling the robotics division just because TechCorp wants to pad their portfolio. She ended the call and finally looked at Marcus. Her hair was pulled back so tight it seemed painful. Dark circles had deepened under her eyes, and her hand trembled slightly as she lowered the phone. I'm sorry, I'm late. Board meeting ran long. From Dylan's room came the sound of laughter. Nathan's high and surprised, Dylan's warm and encouraging. Vivian's expression softened for half a second before the mask returned. They're playing some kind of space game. Dylan's been explaining orbital mechanics for the past hour. I don't think either of them actually understands it, but they're having fun. Nathan understands it. He reads college-level physics textbooks for fun. Vivian's voice carried pride and something else. Worry, maybe, or loneliness. I keep buying him age-appropriate books, and he ignores them. Marcus gestured toward the kitchen. Coffee? She hesitated, then nodded. Marcus poured 2 cups from the pot he had brewed an hour ago, when he realized Vivian would probably arrive stressed and caffeinated. She took the mug and wrapped both hands around it like she was cold, even though the apartment was warm. Your son told Nathan about his mother. Rebecca. Marcus froze. Dylan never talked about Rebecca with strangers. Never. Nathan asked why Dylan lived with just his dad and grandmother. Dylan said his mom was in heaven, that she died when he was born. Vivian's voice was quiet. I'm sorry, that must have been hard. It was 8 years ago. That doesn't make it easier. Marcus leaned against the counter. No, it doesn't. They stood in silence, drinking coffee that was too hot and too bitter. Through the window, Chicago sprawled in early evening light, the skyline catching fire from the setting sun. Somewhere in that city, in boardrooms and courtrooms, in places Marcus would never see, decisions were being made that would determine whether Vivian kept her son, kept her company, kept anything that mattered. The custody hearing is in 3 weeks. Vivian spoke without looking at him. Robert's lawyers have been very busy. Depositions, character witnesses. They're building a case that I'm unfit. Are they using what happened? The night I found you? Yes, they have medical records, hospital reports. They know about the Ambien and the alcohol. They know I was alone in my office at midnight, passed out on the floor. Vivian's hands tightened around the mug. They're calling it a suicide attempt. It wasn't, but it doesn't matter what I say. The optics are bad enough. You need someone who was there, someone who can testify about what actually happened. Her eyes finally met his. Would you? If I asked? Marcus thought about Jennifer Walsh in the HR conference room, about being demoted for doing the right thing, about the bills stacked on his kitchen table and the job he could not afford to lose. Then he thought about Nathan in the next room, laughing at something his son had said, sounding like a child instead of a miniature adult carrying weights too heavy for his shoulders. Yes. Vivian set down her coffee. Her hand found her pocket, then withdrew. Empty. A nervous gesture, Marcus realized, looking for something that was not there. Pills, maybe, or just the comfort of knowing they existed. Robert will come after you. His lawyers will dig into your background, your finances, your job. They'll try to discredit you. Let them. You don't understand. These people are vicious. They'll find every mistake you've ever made and use it against you, against Nathan. Marcus stepped closer. Ma'am, I've worked 3 jobs to keep my son fed. I've cleaned toilets and scrubbed vomit off floors and had rich people look through me like I was invisible. I've been broke and scared and so tired I couldn't see straight. And I'm still here. Your ex-husband doesn't scare me. Something in Vivian's face cracked. Not much, just enough to glimpse the exhaustion underneath. She opened her mouth to respond, but Nathan appeared in the doorway, Dylan right behind him. Mom, Dylan showed me his dad's old circuit boards. Did you know Mr. Reed used to build electronics? Vivian glanced at Marcus, surprise flickering across her features. No, I didn't know that. I took 2 years of electrical engineering before I dropped out. Marcus directed this at Nathan, not Vivian. Had to quit when Rebecca got pregnant. Needed money more than I needed a degree. Dylan bounced on his heels. Dad can fix anything. TVs, computers, even Mrs. Chen's microwave from downstairs. Nathan's eyes lit up with the intensity only 9-year-olds could achieve when discovering someone shared their interest. Could you help me with something? I'm trying to build a radio transmitter, but I can't figure out the circuit design. Vivian's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression shifted. Something urgent. Something bad. She looked at Marcus. I need to go back to the office. There's an emergency with one of our suppliers. Could Nathan stay here? Just for another hour? Marcus nodded. Of course. Vivian crouched beside her son. I'll be back as soon as I can. Be good for Mr. Reed. I'm always good. I know you are. She kissed the top of his head, then left, already pulling up her phone. Marcus heard her voice fading down the hallway, sharp and commanding, shifting back into CEO mode before she reached the stairs. The boys returned to Dylan's room. Marcus cleaned up the coffee cups and checked on Linda, who was dozing on the couch, her breathing shallow but steady. Her medications were lined up on the side table, heart pills, blood pressure pills, the expensive ones Marcus had to order from Canada because they cost half as much there. He counted them. 6 days left until he needed to refill. 6 days to find an extra $200 he did not have. An hour became 2, then 3. Vivian did not return. She did not call. Nathan seemed unsurprised, pulling out his phone at 7 p.m. and ordering pizza delivery with practiced efficiency, giving Marcus's address like he had done this 100 times before at 100 different places. The pizza arrived, and Marcus fed both boys, then settled them in front of a movie while Linda woke and shuffled to bed. At 9 p.m., Nathan finally called his mother. Marcus heard only one side of the conversation, but it was enough. "No, I'm fine. Mr. Reed gave us dinner. I know you're busy. It's okay. I'll just sleep here. Can you ask Mrs. Patricia to bring my school stuff in the morning?" Vivian must have agreed because Nathan hung up and looked at Marcus with the kind of resignation that should not exist in a 9-year-old. "Mom says thank you. She'll pick me up before school tomorrow." Marcus made up the couch with clean sheets and a spare pillow. Dylan lent Nathan pajamas that were too small and a toothbrush still in its package. The boys brushed their teeth side by side in the cramped bathroom, bumping elbows and giggling, and Marcus felt something twist in his chest. This was what childhood should look like. Easy, simple. Two kids being kids, without the weight of absent parents and broken families pressing down on their shoulders. He tucked them both in, Dylan in his bed, Nathan on the couch, and turned off the lights. But an hour later, he heard soft voices and found them both awake, sitting in the dark living room. "Can't sleep?" Marcus kept his voice low. Nathan shook his head. "I never sleep well in new places." "You want to talk?" The boy considered this with the same seriousness he seemed to apply to everything. Then, "Do you think my mom loves me?" The question hit Marcus like a fist. He sat down in the armchair across from the couch, choosing his words carefully. "Yes, I know she does. She's never home. She forgets my soccer games. Last week was my birthday, and she was on a conference call for 3 hours. Nathan's voice was flat, stating facts without self-pity. "My dad says she cares more about her company than about me." "Your dad is wrong. How do you know?" "Because I saw her face when she thought you were missing in the park. I heard her voice when she called to check on you tonight." "She's scared, Nathan. Scared of losing you. Sometimes when people are scared, they work harder, thinking if they can just control everything else in their life, they can keep the thing that matters safe. It doesn't work that way, but she's trying." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. "Dylan's mom died?" "Yeah. Does he miss her?" "Every day. But he has you." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Yeah, he has me. You're a good dad." Nathan lay back down, pulling the blanket up to his chin. "I wish my dad was like you, or that my mom had time to be a mom instead of a CEO. She's both. She's just figuring out how to balance them. Give her time." But Nathan was already asleep or pretending to be. Marcus sat in the dark living room for another hour, listening to two boys breathe in the peaceful rhythm of childhood, and wondered how many nights Nathan had fallen asleep alone in expensive houses with nannies and staff, but no parents. Vivian arrived at 6 a.m. looking like she had not slept at all. Marcus heard her knock and opened the door to find her still in yesterday's clothes, makeup smudged, eyes red-rimmed. She stepped inside without speaking and went straight to Nathan, who was eating cereal at the kitchen table with Dylan. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. The supplier crisis turned into a complete nightmare. 3 factories in Taiwan went offline because of equipment failures. We lost an entire production cycle." Nathan did not look up from his cereal. "It's okay. It's not okay. I promised I'd be back, and I wasn't. Mr. Reed made us pancakes, and we watched a movie about Mars. It was good." Vivian's eyes found Marcus. He was standing by the stove, spatula in hand, trying not to intrude on the moment. She mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." The days that followed fell into a pattern. Nathan came over 3, sometimes 4 times a week. Vivian would drop him off on her way to meetings, pick him up late, always apologizing, always promising to do better next time. Marcus never complained. Dylan was happier than he had been in years, and Nathan was starting to smile more, laugh louder, act like the child he should have been allowed to be. But Marcus was bleeding money. The reduced salary was not enough. He started picking up weekend shifts doing handyman work for neighbors, fixing broken appliances, and rewiring light fixtures for cash under the table. Linda's medications ran out, and he had to choose between paying rent and refilling her prescriptions. He chose the prescriptions. Rent could wait a week. Linda's heart could not. Miguel found him during a break on Thursday, 2 weeks after the demotion. They had barely spoken since that night in Vivian's office. Miguel looked worse than Marcus had ever seen him. Thinner, shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and guilty conscience. "We need to talk." Miguel's voice was barely above a whisper. "Not here." They went to the parking garage, standing between concrete pillars where security cameras did not reach. Miguel lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "I did something, Marcus. Something bad." "I know." Miguel's head snapped up. "You know, the communication system didn't fail on its own that night. You disabled it." "How did you?" "I checked the server logs. Your badge was used to access the system at 11:47 p.m., 15 minutes before Vivian collapsed, right when you should have been on rounds." Marcus kept his voice level. "Why?" Miguel took a long drag, smoke curling into the dim garage. "My daughter, Sophia, she has leukemia, stage 3. The treatments are experimental. Insurance won't cover them. We're drowning in medical bills. Charles Drummond's people approached me 6 weeks ago, offered $50,000 for a small favor. Disable communications for 30 minutes. Let someone access the executive servers without interference. You sold out Vivian Keller to pay for your daughter's cancer treatment." "I didn't know she would," Miguel's voice cracked. "They said it was just about files. Corporate espionage. Not life or death. When I found out she nearly died, I wanted to come forward. But they threatened me. Said if I talked, they'd make sure Sophia lost her spot in the trial program." Marcus understood. Not forgave, but understood. A man would do terrible things to save his child. He would steal, lie, betray anyone if it meant keeping his son or daughter alive. Marcus would have done the same if Dylan needed something only money could buy. "You need to testify. Tell them what Charles did." "I can't." Miguel dropped the cigarette and crushed it under his boot. "Sophia starts the new treatment protocol next week. If I lose my job, if the insurance drops us, she dies. I can't save my conscience and kill my daughter. Don't ask me to choose. Then tell me everything. Who approached you? What exactly did they want? What did you see?" Miguel talked for 20 minutes, laying out the conspiracy in spare, guilty sentences. Charles Drummond wanted Vivian gone. Not fired, destroyed. He had financial interests in TechCorp, a competitor that wanted to acquire Stellaron's robotics division. But Vivian refused to sell. So Charles needed to discredit her, make the board question her fitness to lead. The health incident was supposed to provide leverage. The custody battle was supposed to finish the job. They have people inside the company feeding information to Robert's lawyers. Emails, calendar appointments, medical records that should be confidential. Charles is coordinating everything. He wants Vivian out within 3 months. And you helped him. Miguel's face crumpled. "I helped him. God help me, I helped him." Marcus put a hand on Miguel's shoulder. "You can still make this right. When the time comes, when it matters most, you can tell the truth. They'll destroy me. Maybe. But at least you'll be able to look your daughter in the eye when this is over. Can you do that now?" Miguel had no answer. He walked away, shoulders hunched, carrying the weight of what he had done and what he still might have to do. Marcus watched him go and felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Just the gray understanding that everyone was drowning in their own way, and sometimes the people you thought were villains were just other victims trying to stay afloat. Marcus spent his lunch break in the security office, using credentials that should have been revoked but had somehow slipped through the cracks. He pulled up server logs from the night Vivian collapsed, cross-referencing access times with badge IDs. Miguel's admission had given him the outline. Now he needed proof. The logs showed exactly what Miguel had described. Badge access to the server room at 11:47 p.m., Miguel's ID. Then, 3 minutes later, a second access. This one was different. An override code that should not have existed, the kind of backdoor that required senior IT privileges to create. Marcus traced the code to its origin and found a name he recognized. Simon Graves, legal counsel for the board of directors. Graves had accessed the executive email server for 8 minutes, long enough to download months of correspondence, long enough to find anything that could be weaponized against Vivian. Marcus took screenshots, backed them up to 3 different drives, then erased his own access from the logs. If Charles's people were watching, they would not know Marcus had been digging until it was too late. His phone buzzed. "Vivian." The text was brief. "Can you meet tonight? 8 p.m., my office." Marcus arrived at 7:55, taking the service elevator to avoid being seen. The executive floor was empty except for cleaning staff who nodded at him without recognition. His old colleagues, now strangers. Vivian's door was closed but unlocked. He knocked once and entered. She was standing at the window, silhouetted against the city lights. Without turning, she spoke. Robert filed his petition this morning. Emergency custody hearing. He's claiming I'm a danger to Nathan, that I prioritize work over my son's well-being, that I'm emotionally unstable and potentially suicidal. Marcus closed the door. What evidence is he using? Everything. The hospital incident, my work schedule, every missed soccer game and forgotten birthday. He has emails I sent where I'm short with Nathan's teachers. He has testimony from our former nanny saying I was always absent, always irritable. Vivian finally turned. And he has medical records that should be sealed. Psychiatric evaluations from after our divorce. Prescriptions for anxiety medication. Someone inside the company is feeding him information. And I don't know who. I do. Marcus crossed to her desk and pulled out his phone, showing her the screenshots. Miguel Santos disabled communications that night on orders from Charles Drummond. Simon Graves accessed your email server using an override code. They've been coordinating with Robert's legal team for at least 6 weeks. Vivian stared at the images, her face draining of color. Charles. All this time, I thought he was just positioning for a power play. I didn't realize he was orchestrating everything. He wants you gone. He has stock options in TechCorp worth millions if the board approves a merger. But you're blocking it. So he's using Robert to break you emotionally, create instability, force the board to question your leadership. How do I stop him? You expose the conspiracy. You show the court that Robert isn't acting alone, that there's a coordinated campaign to discredit you. You prove Charles and Graves violated corporate ethics and federal law, and you get Miguel to testify. Miguel won't testify. His daughter's life depends on keeping his job and insurance. Then we find another way to prove it. Marcus gestured at the screenshots. This is hard evidence. Server logs don't lie. It's evidence I shouldn't have. Vivian's voice was sharp. How did you access those logs? You don't have security clearance anymore. I used my old credentials. They haven't been revoked. So you hacked into company systems. That's illegal. So is conspiring to ruin someone's life to force a corporate merger. We're past legal niceties here. Vivian sat down heavily in her chair. If I use this evidence, Charles will have you arrested. You'll lose your job, probably face criminal charges. Your son will watch his father go to prison because he tried to help me. Marcus had already considered this, had lain awake at 3 a.m. doing the calculations, weighing his son's stability against a woman he barely knew and a child who was not his responsibility. The math did not work in favor of noble gestures. But then he thought about Nathan falling asleep on his couch, asking if his mother loved him. He thought about Dylan's face when Nathan laughed at his jokes, the way his son's world had expanded to include someone who understood his loneliness. He thought about Vivian's whispered plea, don't let them take Nathan. Some things mattered more than math. My father told me something before he died. Marcus met Vivian's eyes. He said a man's worth isn't measured by what he has. It's measured by what he's willing to risk for people who can't protect themselves. Nathan can't protect himself. You're trying, but they're rigging the game. So yeah, I'll risk my job. I'll risk charges, because that's what decent people do. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither could say. Vivian looked at Marcus like she was seeing him for the first time, really seeing him, not as a maintenance worker or a convenient ally, but as someone who had made a choice that cost him everything and expected nothing in return. Why? Her voice was barely audible. Why do you care what happens to us? Because nobody should have to fight alone. And because Nathan deserves better than parents who use him as a weapon against each other. Vivian stood and walked to the window again, arms wrapped around herself. When I was Nathan's age, my parents fought constantly. Not about me, about money, about status, about everything except what mattered. My mother drank herself to death when I was 16. My father didn't come to the funeral. He was closing a merger in Tokyo. I learned that love was conditional, that trust was weakness, that the only person I could rely on was myself. She turned back to Marcus. I've spent 20 years building walls around everything that could hurt me, and you're asking me to tear them down and trust a man I met 3 weeks ago. I'm asking you to let me help, that's all. What if you're wrong? What if Charles wins anyway? What if Robert gets Nathan and I lose everything? Then at least you'll know you fought with everything you had, and Nathan will remember that." The words hung in the air between them. Vivian's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. She glanced at it, and whatever softness had been building in her expression vanished. The board called another emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Charles is pushing for a vote of no confidence. He's using Robert's custody petition as evidence of my instability. Vivian's laugh was bitter. 20 years building this company, 12 months, and they're ready to throw me out because my personal life is messy. Then we push back. We show the board what Charles has been doing. We prove he's the unstable one, not you. With evidence obtained illegally? With the truth. However, we can prove it. Vivian looked at Marcus for a long moment, weighing options he could not see. Finally, she nodded. "I have a lawyer, Martin Cross, best corporate attorney in Chicago. I'll give him the evidence. Let him figure out how to use it without getting you arrested. But Marcus, if this goes wrong, if they come after you, I'll do everything I can to protect you. I promise." Marcus did not point out that her promises meant little against men with power and money and the will to destroy anyone in their way. He just nodded and left, taking the service stairs down, 42 floors of concrete and fluorescent lights, and the slowly dawning realization that he had just stepped into a war he might not survive. Friday morning, Nathan did not come to school. Dylan waited by the usual spot where they met before the bell, but Nathan's mother's Tesla never arrived. Dylan texted him. No response. Marcus checked the news during his lunch break and found the headline, "Tech CEO faces emergency custody hearing. Son's welfare at center of legal battle." He called Vivian. The call went to voicemail. He tried again an hour later. Same result. Marcus finished his shift, picked up Dylan from school, and tried not to show his growing unease. Something had happened. Something big enough that Vivian had pulled Nathan from school and gone dark. At 6 p.m., his phone finally rang. "Unknown number," Marcus answered. "Mr. Reed, this is Martin Cross, Ms. Keller's attorney. I need you to come to my office immediately. Vivian has been in a custody hearing all day, and the situation has deteriorated significantly. Your testimony may be required sooner than we expected." What happened? Robert Keller has filed an emergency motion claiming Nathan is in immediate danger. He's provided evidence of Vivian's alleged instability, including the incident you witnessed. The judge is considering removing Nathan from her custody tonight, pending a full hearing next week. We need to present counter evidence immediately, or Vivian loses her son in 3 hours. Marcus looked at Dylan, who was doing homework at the kitchen table, and at Linda, who was watching television with the sound too loud. He thought about the bills, the rent, the job he still needed to keep his family afloat. He thought about all the rational reasons to say no, to protect himself, to stay out of a fight between rich people with expensive lawyers. Then he thought about Nathan asking if his mother loved him, and the decision made itself. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Martin Cross's office occupied the 48th floor of a glass tower in the Loop, the kind of space where leather chairs cost more than Marcus made in a month. The attorney himself was 60, silver-haired, with the bearing of someone who had spent decades winning battles other lawyers would not take. He shook Marcus's hand with a grip that conveyed both assessment and approval. "The situation is this. Robert's lawyers presented medical records showing Vivian was hospitalized for a drug-related incident. They have testimony from her former nanny claiming she regularly missed important events in Nathan's life. They have emails where Vivian prioritized business over her son. And they have an expert witness, a child psychologist, who will testify that Nathan shows signs of emotional neglect." Marcus sat in one of those expensive chairs. "What do you have?" "The truth, which unfortunately carries less weight than we'd like in family court." Martin opened a file folder. "Your testimony establishes that Vivian's collapse was accidental, not a suicide attempt. But Robert's team will argue you're biased because you formed a relationship with her. They'll paint you as either incompetent or complicit. So what's the play? We attack Robert's credibility, show he's not acting out of concern for Nathan, but out of greed and revenge." Martin pulled out another document. "Robert Keller has gambling debts totaling $300,000. He's being sued by 2 casinos. His new wife filed for separation last month. The man is desperate for money and using Nathan as leverage to extract a settlement from Vivian. Does the judge know this? We're presenting it tonight. along with evidence that Robert rarely sees Nathan. In the past 6 months, he's canceled 14 scheduled visits. The few times he did show up, he spent most of the visit on his phone or drinking. That it should be enough. It should be. But judges are unpredictable in emergency hearings. They err on the side of caution. If there's any doubt about Nathan's safety, they'll remove him tonight and sort out the details later. Martin closed the folder. That's where you come in. I need you to testify not just about the night Vivian collapsed, but about what you've observed since. The relationship between her and Nathan, the effort she's making, the changes you've seen. I've seen a woman working herself to death because she's terrified of losing her son. Marcus met Martin's eyes. I've seen her drop everything when Nathan needs her. I've seen her try so hard to be present that she forgets to eat or sleep. She's not perfect, but she loves that kid more than anything. Can you say that under oath? With Robert's lawyers tearing into every word? Yes. Martin studied him for a long moment. You understand what you are risking, your job, your reputation. Robert's team will dig into your background. They'll find every mistake, every unpaid bill, every moment of struggle, and use it to make you look desperate and dishonest. Let them dig. The hearing was in a courtroom that felt more like a conference room. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, no jury box or gallery. Just a judge's bench, 2 tables for opposing counsel, and chairs for witnesses. Vivian sat beside Martin, wearing a navy suit that looked armor-plated. Her face was composed, but her hands betrayed her, fingers laced together so tightly the knuckles had gone white. Nathan was not there. The judge had ordered him to remain with court-appointed supervision until a decision was made. Marcus wondered what the boy was thinking right now, sitting in some sterile waiting room while strangers decided his fate. Robert Keller sat at the opposite table with 3 attorneys, all sharp suits and sharper eyes. He looked confident, relaxed, like this was already won. When his gaze found Marcus, recognition flashed across his face, followed by contempt. The judge was a woman in her 50s, Judge Elena Rosewood, with gray hair and an expression that suggested she had seen every variation of family dysfunction humans could devise. She called the hearing to order and turned to Robert's lead attorney, a man named Preston Hayes, who spoke in the measured tones of someone used to being heard. Your Honor, we're here because Nathan Keller is in immediate danger. His mother's behavior over the past 6 months has been erratic and alarming. She works excessive hours, leaving Nathan in the care of staff. She missed his birthday celebration. She was found unconscious in her office after mixing prescription medication with alcohol. She has demonstrated repeatedly that her career takes precedence over her son's well-being. Hayes presented medical records, testimony from the former nanny, psychological evaluations suggesting Vivian had difficulty forming emotional connections. He painted a picture of a woman so consumed by ambition that she had no room left for motherhood. Martin Cross stood to respond. Your Honor, everything Mr. Hayes just described could apply to thousands of working parents in this country. Ms. Keller is guilty of working hard and occasionally making mistakes. That doesn't make her unfit. What makes Robert Keller fit? A man with $300,000 in gambling debts. A man whose current marriage is collapsing. A man who has canceled the majority of his scheduled visits with his son. Hayes objected. My client's financial situation is irrelevant. We're discussing the child's safety. It's entirely relevant when his motivation is financial, not paternal. Martin presented bank records showing Robert's debts, divorce filings from his current wife, casino records documenting his gambling problem. This isn't about Nathan's welfare. It's about Robert leveraging his son to extract money from his ex-wife. The judge listened to both sides, her expression unreadable. Finally, she turned to Vivian. Ms. Keller, I want to hear from you directly. Why should I believe you can provide a stable home for Nathan when the evidence suggests otherwise? Vivian stood. Her voice was steady, but Marcus could see the tremor in her hands. Your Honor, I won't pretend to be a perfect mother. I work too much. I miss things I shouldn't miss. I've made mistakes that I'll regret for the rest of my life. But I love my son with everything I have. Every decision I make, every hour I work, every sacrifice I've made has been to build a future for him, to give him security, opportunity, a foundation he can build on. Judge Rosewood's expression softened slightly. What about the incident in your office, the one that brought you to the hospital? I was exhausted. I made a terrible error in judgment by mixing medication with alcohol, but it wasn't a suicide attempt. It was the wake-up call I needed. Since then, I've been in therapy. I've restructured my work schedule. I'm learning to balance my responsibilities better. I'm not asking you to believe I'm fixed. I'm asking you to give me the chance to prove I can be the mother Nathan deserves. The judge made notes. Mr. Cross, you indicated you have additional testimony? Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call Marcus Reed. Marcus stood and walked to the witness stand. The court officer swore him in. Martin approached, his demeanor professional but warm. Mr. Reed, you work at Stellaron Industries, correct? Yes. Maintenance and security. And you were the person who found Mrs. Keller the night she collapsed? I was monitoring security cameras. I saw her fall and responded immediately. When I reached her, she was unconscious. I called 911 and administered basic first aid until the paramedics arrived. In your professional opinion, was this a suicide attempt? No, there was an empty prescription bottle and alcohol, but the scene didn't look intentional. It looked like someone who had pushed themselves too far and made a dangerous mistake. Hayes stood. Objection. Mr. Reed isn't qualified to make psychiatric assessments. Sustained. Martin, move on. Martin nodded. Mr. Reed, have you had contact with Ms. Keller and her son since that night? Yes. My son Dylan and Nathan became friends. Nathan has spent time at my home. And what have you observed about the relationship between Ms. Keller and Nathan? Marcus looked directly at the judge. I've seen a woman trying desperately to do right by her son while managing impossible demands. I've seen her drop everything when Nathan needs her. I've seen her exhausted, stressed, barely holding it together, but always putting him first when it matters. She's not failing Nathan. She's fighting for him. Hayes was on his feet before Marcus finished. Your Honor, Mr. Reed has formed a personal relationship with Ms. Keller. His testimony is hardly objective. The judge waved him down. I'll determine credibility. Mr. Hayes, you may cross-examine. Hayes approached the witness stand like a predator circling wounded prey. Mr. Reed, you said you work in maintenance and security. What's your annual salary? About $36,000. And you're a single father, correct? Yes. Struggling financially? Like most people. You've had utility shut-off notices in the past year, haven't you? Your truck was repossessed for 2 weeks before you caught up on payments. Marcus felt heat rise in his face. I've had some tough months. I always catch up. You dropped out of college, correct? No degree? I left school when my wife got pregnant. I needed to work, so you're not exactly in a position to judge what constitutes proper parenting, are you? You're a college dropout working minimum wage jobs, barely keeping your own household together. Why should this court give weight to your opinion? The words were designed to humiliate, to make Marcus feel small and irrelevant, and they worked. Shame crawled up his spine, hot and familiar. He was about to respond when he caught sight of Vivian. She was staring at Hayes with an expression Marcus had never seen, pure, incandescent rage. Martin stood. Objection. Mr. Reed's financial situation has no bearing on his powers of observation or his credibility. Goes to bias, Your Honor. Mr. Reed is clearly hoping to curry favor with a wealthy woman who could improve his circumstances. The judge looked at Marcus. Mr. Reed, are you receiving any compensation for your testimony? No, Your Honor. Have you received money or gifts from Ms. Keller? No, she's never offered and I've never asked. Then why are you here? Marcus thought about the easy answer, the one that would sound noble and earn points with the judge. Instead, he told the truth. Because I know what it's like to raise a kid alone and be terrified you're not enough. I know what it's like to lie awake at 3 a.m, wondering if your child will grow up resenting you for all the things you couldn't provide. Ms. Keller is dealing with that same fear, except her stakes are higher because people like Mr. Hayes are watching her every move, waiting for her to fail. He looked directly at Robert. Nathan is a good kid, smart, kind of little lonely. He needs his mother, not a father who sees him as a bargaining chip, not a courtroom full of lawyers arguing about who's more fit. He needs the parent who's been there every day, even when she's exhausted and scared and barely keeping it together. That's Vivian. The courtroom was silent. Hayes seemed momentarily thrown, recalibrating his approach. Very touching, Mr. Reed. But the fact remains that you have no credentials, no expertise, and a clear emotional investment in the outcome. Your Honor, this testimony should be disregarded as biased and uninformed. Judge Rosewood made more notes. Mr. Cross, do you have additional witnesses? One more, Your Honor. Martin glanced at the courtroom door. We've been trying to reach him, but the door opened. Miguel Santos walked in, and every eye in the room turned. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes red-rimmed, hands shaking. But he was there. Miguel Santos, Your Honor, head of security at Stellaron Industries. He has critical information about the circumstances surrounding Ms. Keller's collapse. Hayes was on his feet immediately. Objection. This is irregular. We weren't notified of additional witnesses. It's an emergency hearing, Mr. Hayes. I'll allow it. Judge Rosewood gestured to Miguel. Mr. Santos, please approach. Miguel took the stand. The court officer swore him in. Martin gave Marcus a quick glance, surprise mixed with hope, then approached Miguel. Mr. Santos, you were on duty the night Ms. Keller collapsed? Yes. Why didn't you respond when Mr. Reed called for help? Miguel's voice was barely audible. I was instructed to disable the communication system. By whom? Charles Drummond, chairman of Stellaron's board of directors. He paid me $50,000 to create a window where security would be compromised. The courtroom erupted. Hayes was objecting. Robert was leaning forward in shock, and Vivian's face had gone white. Judge Rosewood banged her gavel. Order, Mr. Santos, that's a serious allegation. Do you have proof? Miguel pulled out his phone with trembling hands. Bank deposits, text messages, everything. He coordinated the whole thing, wanted Mrs. Keller discredited so the board would force her out. He's working with Robert's lawyers, feeding them information, orchestrating this custody battle. Hayes looked genuinely stunned. Your Honor, this is absurd. My client has no connection to Charles Drummond. Martin was already pulling out documents. Phone records showing calls between Robert's legal team and Drummond's office. Email exchanges discussing strategy, financial transfers that trace back to accounts controlled by Drummond. The conspiracy wasn't just real, it was documented. Judge Rosewood's expression had shifted from skeptical to furious. Mr. Hayes, your client appears to be participating in a coordinated campaign to manipulate these proceedings. Your Honor, we had no knowledge. Save it. The judge turned to Miguel. Mr. Santos, why are you coming forward now? Miguel's voice cracked. Because my daughter is sick. I did this to pay for her treatment, but I can't live with myself knowing I helped destroy someone's family to save my own. Ms. Keller is a good person. Good. Nathan needs his mother. I won't be part of taking that away from him. Vivian was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Marcus had never seen her cry before. She had been stone and steel for so long that witnessing her break was almost unbearable. Judge Rosewood closed her folder with a snap. I've heard enough. This custody petition is denied. Nathan Keller will remain with his mother. Furthermore, I'm ordering an investigation into potential fraud and conspiracy charges against all parties involved in this scheme. Mr. Keller, you should expect to hear from law enforcement shortly. Robert was out of his chair, face red. This is outrageous. That woman is unstable. You're done, Mr. Keller. Sit down or I'll hold you in contempt. Robert sat, deflating like a punctured tire. His lawyers were already gathering papers, preparing for the fallout. Martin Cross allowed himself the smallest smile. The judge stood. Ms. Keller, I want to be clear. This ruling isn't a blank check. You will continue therapy. You will maintain a reasonable work schedule, and you will prioritize your son's needs. If I see you back in my courtroom because you've reverted to old patterns, the outcome will be very different. Understood? Vivian wiped her eyes and stood. Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. This hearing is adjourned. The courtroom emptied slowly. Robert stormed out without looking back, his lawyers trailing behind. Miguel approached Marcus in the hallway. I'm probably going to lose my job, maybe go to prison, but at least I can look Sophia in the eye now. Marcus gripped his shoulder. You did the right thing. Doesn't make it easier. No, but it makes it possible to live with yourself. That counts for something. Miguel nodded and left. Marcus found Vivian talking to Martin near the elevators. When she saw Marcus, she broke away and walked to him. For a moment, they just stood there, the weight of everything that had happened settling between them. You saved me. Again. Marcus shook his head. You saved yourself. I just showed up. She laughed, a sound somewhere between relief and disbelief. Nathan is waiting downstairs with court services. I need to go get him. Will you come? I'd like him to know what you did. They rode the elevator down in silence. Nathan was in a small room off the main lobby, sitting with a social worker, his face pale and anxious. When the door opened and he saw his mother, he ran to her. Vivian caught him and held on like he might disappear if she let go. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry you had to go through this. Is it over? Do I have to live with Dad? No, you're coming home with me, tonight and every night. Nathan buried his face in her shoulder. Marcus turned to leave, giving them privacy, but Nathan's voice stopped him. Mr. Reed was there? Marcus turned back. Yeah, I was there. Did you help my mom? I tried. Nathan pulled away from Vivian and walked to Marcus. Then, without warning, he hugged him. The gesture was so unexpected, so full of trust and gratitude, that Marcus felt something break open in his chest. He hugged the boy back, this child who was not his son, but who had somehow become important in ways he could not articulate. Thank you for helping my mom. Nathan's voice was muffled against Marcus's chest. She needs more people helping her. We all do, buddy. We all do. They left the courthouse together, stepping out into Chicago twilight. The city spread before them, cold, indifferent, beautiful. Vivian held Nathan's hand, and for the first time since Marcus had met her, she looked almost at peace. I need to go home. Get Nathan settled. But tomorrow we need to deal with Charles. Martin is filing complaints with the SEC and the board. There's going to be a war. You'll win. How do you know? Because you don't fight fair when someone threatens your family, and neither do I. She smiled, small but genuine. I owe you more than I can ever repay. You don't owe me anything. Just take care of Nathan. That's enough. Marcus drove home to find Dylan asleep on the couch and Linda watching late-night television. He paid the babysitter from his dwindling cash reserve and sat at the kitchen table, exhaustion crashing over him like a wave. His phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. Nathan wants you to know he got to stay with his mom because of you. He also wants to know if he can come over this weekend. So do I, not for me, just to say thank you properly. Marcus replied, Saturday. Dylan would like that. The weekend came. Nathan arrived with Vivian, who brought pizza and insisted on paying even though Marcus protested. The boys disappeared into Dylan's room, and Marcus and Vivian sat at the small kitchen table, eating slices that were too greasy and too perfect. Martin called this morning. The board is meeting Monday to discuss Charles. He's been suspended pending investigation. Helen Torres resigned before they could fire her. The company is in chaos. What happens to you? I go back to work, try to fix what they broke. Vivian took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. I also need to fix what I broke. My relationship with Nathan, my health, my life. I can't keep living the way I have been. What are you going to change? Everything. She laughed, but it was strained. I hired a new COO, someone who can handle day-to-day operations while I focus on strategic planning and actually being present. I'm cutting my hours by half. I'm attending Nathan's soccer games and school events. I'm trying to be the mother he needs instead of the CEO everyone expects. That's good. It's terrifying. I don't know how to do this, how to balance everything, how to be vulnerable without falling apart. Nobody knows. You just try and fail and try again. Eventually, you get better at it. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the boys laugh in the other room. Vivian's phone buzzed multiple times, but she ignored it. A small victory, but significant. Marcus, I want to offer you your job back. Full reinstatement, supervisor position, better pay. Martin talked to the interim board, and they agreed, no. Vivian blinked. No, I appreciate it, but no, I don't want a job because you feel guilty. I want to earn my place. You did earn it. You saved my life twice. You testified in court. You put everything on the line for me and Nathan, and I'd do it again, but not for a promotion. Marcus set down his pizza. I've been thinking about going back to school, finishing my degree. Maybe electrical engineering, maybe something else. Dylan's getting older. He needs to see his father working towards something, not just surviving. How will you pay for it? I'll figure it out. Student loans, night classes, whatever it takes. Vivienne pulled out her phone and typed quickly. Done. Stellaron has a tuition reimbursement program for employees. Full coverage for degree programs related to your field. You're eligible. I'm not. You're still an employee. I called HR yesterday. Your demotion is being reversed. You're reinstated as Director of Operations and Security. Salary $95,000. Benefits. Tuition coverage. Non-negotiable. Marcus stared at her. That's too much. It's not enough, but it's what I can do right now. She leaned forward. Let me help, Marcus, not because I owe you, but because you deserve it. You have skills and intelligence that are wasted scrubbing floors. Use them. The offer was overwhelming, life-changing, the kind of opportunity Marcus had stopped believing existed for people like him. But accepting felt like crossing a line, moving into a world where he did not belong. I need to think about it. Think fast. The position starts Monday. Vivienne stood. Nathan, time to go. 2. The boys emerged, disappointed but obedient. Nathan hugged Dylan goodbye, then turned to Marcus. Dad's moving away. To California, he told me yesterday. So I won't have to see him anymore if I don't want to. How do you feel about that? Nathan shrugged. Okay, I guess. He was never really around anyway. At least now I don't have to pretend he wants to be. The words were delivered with the casual brutality of childhood honesty. Vivienne's face tightened, but she did not contradict her son. She just put a hand on his shoulder and guided him toward the door. After they left, Marcus sat in the darkening apartment and thought about the offer. Director of Operations and Security, a title that sounded important, that came with respect and stability and the ability to provide for Dylan in ways he never had before. But it also came with expectations, with the pressure to perform in a world that still saw him as an outsider, with the constant awareness that he would be surrounded by people who had degrees and connections and backgrounds he could never match. Dylan shuffled out of his room, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Dad, are you okay? Yeah, buddy, just thinking. About Nathan's mom's job offer? Marcus looked at his son in surprise. You heard that? I hear everything. Dylan sat beside him. You should take it. You're smart enough. And Nathan's mom is nice. She needs people she can trust. What if I'm not good enough? What if you are? The question hung between them, simple and devastating. Marcus had spent 8 years believing he was not good enough. Not for Rebecca, not for Dylan, not for anything beyond hard work and low expectations. But maybe his son saw something he had missed. Maybe capability was not about credentials or background. Maybe it was about showing up, doing the work, and refusing to quit when things got hard. Okay, I'll take it, Dylan grinned. Good. Can we get a bigger apartment now? One where I don't have to share a room with Grandma's oxygen machine? We'll see what we can do. Monday morning, Marcus arrived at Stellaron Tower at 7 a.m., wearing the only suit he owned, a black number purchased for Rebecca's funeral and worn twice since. It fit poorly, the shoulders too tight, but it would have to do. He took the elevator to the executive floor, no longer needing special access, and found his new office waiting. Not large, but real. A desk, a computer, windows overlooking the city. Jennifer Walsh appeared in the doorway, the same HR director who had demoted him weeks earlier. Her expression was carefully neutral. Mr. Reed, welcome to your new position. I prepared orientation materials. You'll be meeting with department heads this week to establish your responsibilities. Thank you. And Mr. Reed, I want to apologize for how you were treated during the investigation. We should have recognized you were acting appropriately. It won't happen again. The apology was corporate, rehearsed, probably mandated by legal counsel, but it was something. I appreciate that. She left. Marcus sat behind his desk and booted up the computer. His first email was from Vivienne. Board meeting at 9 a.m. Charles Drummond is being formally removed. Helen Torres is under investigation. You should be there. You're part of leadership now. The meeting was in the same boardroom where Marcus had been interrogated weeks ago. Now he sat at the table as an equal, or something close to it. Charles Drummond was not present, already escorted from the building by security. His replacement, an older woman named Patricia Vance, chaired the meeting with calm efficiency. Vivienne presented her case methodically. Charles had violated his fiduciary duty, conspired to damage the company, and engaged in illegal activities that exposed Stellaron to massive liability. The board voted unanimously to terminate him and initiate legal proceedings. Helen Torres would face similar consequences. When the meeting ended, board members approached Vivian with congratulations and carefully worded apologies. Marcus hung back, still uncomfortable in his new role. Vivian found him near the door. "You did well in there. Didn't say much, but you paid attention. That's more than half of them do. Still figuring out where I fit. You fit fine. Give it time." They walked to the elevators together. The building felt different now, not a place Marcus serviced, but a place he belonged. It was disorienting and exhilarating in equal measure. Nathan's soccer game is Saturday, 2 p.m. Vivian pressed the elevator button. "Dylan should come, you too if you're free. I'll be there, good. Because Nathan specifically requested you. He told me you're the only adult who doesn't treat him like he's fragile." The elevator arrived. Marcus stepped in beside her, and they rode down in silence. When the doors opened on the ground floor, Vivian turned to him. "I never thanked you properly. For everything. You thanked me plenty. No, I mean for seeing me when I was at my worst and not treating me like I was broken. For treating Nathan like he mattered. For being decent when you had every reason not to be. People like you are rare, Marcus. Don't ever think otherwise." She walked away before he could respond, leaving him standing in the lobby with those words echoing in his head. People like you are rare. He had never thought of himself as rare. Just ordinary. Just a man trying to do right by his son and survive each day without too many compromises. But maybe that was what made it rare. Maybe decency was uncommon not because people were inherently bad, but because life made it expensive. And choosing it anyway, when the cost was high and the reward uncertain, maybe that was worth something after all. Saturday arrived cold and bright, the kind of autumn day where you could see your breath, but the sun made it bearable. The soccer field was in a suburban park north of the city, surrounded by trees dropping leaves in gold and red. Marcus and Dylan arrived early, finding spots on the metal bleachers. Other parents filtered in expensive athletic wear, coffee from upscale chains. The comfortable confidence of people whose biggest worry was whether their child would make the competitive team. Vivian arrived 5 minutes before kickoff, alone. She climbed the bleachers and sat beside Marcus, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Nathan's nervous. First game of the season. He's not very athletic. He'll be fine. It's just kids kicking a ball around." But she was nervous too, Marcus realized. Watching her son do something normal, something that had nothing to do with genius or expectations or living up to a name. Just a boy playing soccer with other boys. Some better, some worse. All equally important in that moment. The game started. Nathan played midfield, running hard but always a step behind. He missed a pass, stumbled once but kept trying. When his team scored, a lucky deflection off another kid's shin, Nathan jumped and cheered with pure, unself-conscious joy. Vivian was on her feet instantly, clapping and shouting encouragement, and Marcus realized this might be the first time she had ever attended one of Nathan's games. At halftime, the boys ran to their parents for water and snacks. Nathan came straight to Vivian, face flushed and happy. "Did you see? I almost got an assist." "I saw, sweetheart. You're doing great." Nathan chugged from his water bottle, then noticed Marcus. "You came, wouldn't miss it. Dylan's teaching me how to dribble better. Says I need to keep my head up more." Dylan grinned. "It's true, you watch the ball too much. Gotta see the whole field." The boys ran back to their team huddle. Vivian sat back down and Marcus saw her wipe her eyes quickly, trying to be subtle. "You okay? I miss so much. So many games and practices and moments. I can't get them back." "No, but you're here now. That's what matters." She nodded, not entirely convinced, but wanting to believe it. The second half started. Nathan's team won 3-2, and though Nathan did not score, he played hard and looked happy. Afterward, both families went for pizza at a place Dylan chose, loud and cheap and perfect. At the table, Marcus watched Nathan and Dylan argue good-naturedly about soccer strategy, while Vivian tried to follow the conversation and mostly just smiled. This was what normal looked like, not perfect, just present. Vivian's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then silenced it. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Work? Always. But it can wait." She looked at Nathan, who was laughing at something Dylan said. "This is more important." And in that moment, Marcus understood that Vivian was going to be okay. Not because she had won her custody battle or saved her company or proven everyone wrong, but because she had finally figured out what mattered and she was choosing it over everything else. It would be hard. She would struggle and fail and have to learn the same lessons repeatedly. But she was trying, which was more than could be said for many people with far fewer demands on their time. The evening wound down. Dylan and Nathan exchanged promises to practice together before the next game. Vivian and Marcus stood in the parking lot while the boys climbed into their respective vehicles. Thank you for coming today. It meant a lot to Nathan. To me, too. Same time next week? Yes. And Marcus, I'm enrolling in that parent-teacher conference Nathan's school is hosting. First time in 2 years. Will you and Dylan come? I could use the moral support. Of course. They parted ways, and Marcus drove home feeling something he had not felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate kind that came from wanting things to be different, but the quiet kind that came from watching them actually change. Vivian was learning to be present. Nathan was learning to trust that his mother would show up. And Marcus was learning that sometimes helping others was the same as helping yourself. The world was still hard. Bills still came due. Work still demanded more than seemed fair. But there were people worth fighting for, and that made the fight bearable, maybe even worthwhile.